Let's have a quick conversation about Capital One business lines of credit. You have the option to apply using EIN only or without EIN. Okay. And Capital One is a stellar institution, fantastic institution to deal with. You have great customer service. It's just amazing. So here is the overview that I really want you to have in mind when you think about a Capital One business line of credit. You need to understand that Capital One is really flexible when it comes to granting business lines of credit. Okay, the only thing is Capital One is geo restricted. In other words, they're not in all 50 states. They are in a few states, they're like 10 or 15, and so they have repositioned themselves more as an online lender. So it doesn't matter whether you are in Los Angeles or you are in Austin, Texas, or you are in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can still qualify for a Capital One business line of credit. Okay. The only thing is you might not have a branch nearby where you can go and talk to someone. But the good thing we love about Capital One when it comes to business lines of credit is that they have stellar customer service. They have generosity. They're very generous. In other words, they will grant you a very high line of credit. And on top of that, they have a flexibility in terms of what you can use the money for. We'll love them for that a lot. Okay, you can use a Capital One business line of credit with EIN only optional. To improve cash flow for your daily operations. Okay, you're able to actually you can plug in occasional liquidity gaps. You can bridge the gaps between your goals and the cash flow required to achieve them. Okay. What we love about Capital One, again, going back to the whole story about generosity, check this out. Capital One can actually grant you up to $5 million in business line of credit. It's just fantastic. And again, I want to say that you actually can qualify using EIN or without EIN. And on top of that, what we love about this product from Capital One is that you have automatic payments, so you can easily set up automatic payments from your business checking accounts. You have banker access, which is really important. Having access to a Capital One banker is like the holy grail because they are really good. Like they really know their stuff and they're there to help you. Okay, so basically, Capital One has this constellation of dedicated business bankers. They're there to support your individual needs. It's just fantastic. Okay. On top of that, the Capital One also has they have a flexible lending. In other words, they have terms and structure. The way they structure their business lines of credit is really good because you're able to figure out the right payment schedule. You're able to have the right access to your funds, and you are able to actually run things properly. Fantastic. Let me give you the steps you need to follow if you want to get a Capital One business line of credit with EIN as an option. Okay. So, by the way, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. And when we have this kind of conversation, I'm always happy because again, when you discuss such a stellar institution as Capital One, it's just fantastic. Now, if you want to apply for a business line of credit at Capital One, you need to actually get together with what they call a branch ambassador. We love that name. So basically the thing is that Capital One, that's how they call their bankers, a branch ambassador. So you can actually go to a Capital One location, or you can actually just give them a call. Okay. And to be eligible, you will need to have been in business for at least 2 years, and you have to actually it's either you have been in business for 2 years or you have a Capital One business checking account, or both. What I want to advise you to do right now is, if you are interested in having business credit from Capital One, I want you to open a business checking account right now. Even better, I want you to open a business checking and a business savings account. That way you are starting to build your relationship with Capital One, and later on you can parlay that relationship into a solid business credit relationship, business credit facility. This is important. Okay. Now, when we talk about the lines of credit, again, very generous. Capital One is very generous. You are looking at $10,000 to $5 million. Okay. And so depending on the product and on your geography, your state, the state where you're applying from, there may be collateral or deposit amount requirements. Okay. And so one thing you need to understand here is that Capital One does place a limit on their line of credit. So there is a limit of one line of credit per tax or EIN number. So based on your EIN number, you basically might only be approved for one business line of credit, but that's okay anyway. I mean, why do you need so many business line of credit from Capital One for? I mean, if you need another business line of credit, go apply at Chase, go apply at Citi, go apply at Wells Fargo, go apply at PNC, Truist, go apply at the U.S. Bank. I mean, you don't actually put all your eggs in the same proverbial basket anyway. Okay, so after you apply, what happens? So all loan applications are subject to credit approval, and what will happen here is that Capital One will get back to you within 1 to 3 business days. Okay, they're really fast. They're really fast. So yeah, they're just fantastic. I really want to dig a little deeper into the eligibility question because we have actually received a lot of questions about it, and it's important to really clarify things here. By the way, I want to quickly just to remind you of today's topic. We're having a conversation about Capital One business lines of credit, and EIN is optional, so you can apply with EIN or without EIN, not a problem. So the thing is, when we talk about eligibility, if you want to constantly be you want to constantly qualify for a Capital One business line of credit, besides the revenue, besides the operational history, and besides the sector requirements, the relationship is important. I've already mentioned that, but on top of that, it really helps when you talk to a Capital One branch ambassador. In other words, the dedicated banker who's going to help you succeed. Make sure you have a business plan. Make sure you have financial projections. They love that. They love that. You know why? Because those are experts. They deal with this all day long. They look at numbers. Those are bankers. They understand numbers. They understand financial statements. They understand business plans. Make sure that you have a properly written business plan that clarifies your business, that actually elucidates how you make money, how your business makes money. Okay. I mean, the cool thing is Capital One wants you to be in business for 2 years or have a relationship with them. So that means what? It means even if you are a startup, even if you are, let's say, a young business, you can still qualify for a Capital One business line of credit. Just make sure you have a business plan. Make sure that you have a financial statements. And again, those financial statements don't have to be actual data. They can be estimated data. They can be projected data. They can be forecasted data. Okay, financial forecasts are a real thing, and Capital One will honor those financial forecasts as long as they are realistic. They need to be realistic. So if you reach out, if you're asking someone to say, listen, how do I qualify for a Capital One business line of credit? Well, just make sure you have a realistic assumptions, realistic numbers. Okay, this will help you. This will help you a lot. On top of that, make sure that if you want to go for a secured line of credit, which is totally possible with Capital One, make sure you have the proper collateral also to post. Okay, very important. Let me give you a few pro tips, boss. The thing here is that it's important to understand that there is a formula for success when it comes to always qualifying for a Capital One business line of credit. And see, when we talk about your time in business, it's not just about the time you have been in business. It's about the time you have in business, like on an active basis. Because see, the thing is, some businesses, like some people create businesses, like you can set up your LLC, let's say this year, and you wait for 5 years before you actually start doing stuff on the LLC. So you can't say, well, I've been in business for 5 years. No. We're talking about, when we speak about operational history, we're speaking about operational history that is active. This is really important to mention because a lot of folks apply at Capital One and they get denied because they don't have the proper operational history. It's because you haven't been in business long enough. And we're talking about real business here, okay? So you got to be in business long enough, okay? So, and you also want to think about your credit score and history. So if you are looking for a Capital One business line of credit with EIN as optional, make sure that you have been in business for long enough to reassure Capital One branch ambassadors that if they actually grant you the line of credit you're looking for, you'll be in a position to repay Capital One, because that's what they care about. I mean, Capital One is not in business to actually just grant, just like dole out, free cash. No, they're a bank. It's called, Capital One is a bank. So they need to turn the profits. And so it's really important to actually understand that aspect of things, okay? And also make sure you have the business bank account with Capital One. You can have other business bank accounts, but you need to have one with Capital One because they want to wire the money, their own money, to themselves, so to speak. Okay, they want to wire the business line of credit to a Capital One account. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't have a bank account with other banks, but you can have a bank account with Chase, Truist, Wells Fargo, BMO Harris, First Citizens, Citizens Financial, and whatnot. I mean, Navy Fed, Penn Fed, whatever. It doesn't matter. But you want to have an account also with Capital One. Overall, one thing I want to say here is that in general, this has nothing to do with this topic, but you want to have 2 or 3, maximum 4 accounts, business accounts. Okay, so try to limit yourself to the number of accounts that you have. And by the way, I want to quickly remind you to this topic. We're still having a conversation about how to obtain a Capital One business line of credit with EIN as an option. And one thing I really want to talk about, your financial history, your company's financial history, because a Capital One branch ambassador cares about that. So the business plan that you have written will actually incorporate part of it, but it wouldn't be the only thing. The place where you can talk a lot more about your financial history is in your financial projections, is in your financial statements. Okay, so we're talking about, we're not just having a conversation about your financial history in terms of cash inflows and cash outflows. We're also talking about all the other aspects of your operations. Okay, so normally when we talk about a normal set of financial statements, we're speaking about four accounting reports that Capital One branch ambassadors like to see when they actually review your application for a Capital One business line of credit. So they love to see a statement of income, also called P&L. So this is like profit and loss statement. They love to see also a balance sheet. In some cases, it's called a statement of a statement of a financial position or a statement of financial condition. They love to see a cash flow statement, also called a statement of cash flow. And so this is what really shows the liquidity trends in your business. And a branch ambassador or Capital One also loves to see a statement of owner's equity. So sometimes it's called a statement of stockholders equity. The thing here is that they want to see this last statement because they want to understand who is behind the business. Okay, Capital One is about to grant you a $10,000 to $5 million business line of credit. They really need to understand whom they were dealing with. Okay, they need to have a clear idea of about whom they are dealing with, and part of your financial history is your annual revenue. Okay, your annual revenue is an important consideration in the application process. So please make sure that you beef up that aspect of things so you are in a better position when it comes to being approved. Very quintessential. Now, let me give you an approach here that will help you a lot, especially when it comes to getting a business line of credit from Capital One with bad credit. Normally, Capital One wants you to have like a good credit to get their business financing products, but sometimes, hey, listen, stuff happens. You never know. How do you qualify? Now, the thing is, you need to know whether or not whether your business meets all their requirements. So if you don't meet the Capital One business line of credit requirements, do you meet other loan requirements? Because remember, Capital One is a full-fledged bank. They offer a constellation of business financing products. So if you don't qualify for a business line of credit, you might qualify for a business loan. You might qualify for equipment financing. You might qualify for other business credit products. So do you qualify for something else? Okay, and have you worked in the last 6 months, in the last 3 months to actually improve your credit? Talk to me about that. Have you thought about lowering your credit utilization ratio? Talk to me about that. Have you paid all your bills on time? Talk to me about that. Have you reviewed your credit reports for inaccuracies? Talk to me about that, boss. And the thing is, have you actually considered secured business loan options? Because Capital One, again, they offer unsecured and secured loan options. You might be thinking, well, why do I need to get a secure business loan option? Well, because if your business has some assets, you might want to pledge those assets to make sure that you use the assets to get the line of credit or loan that you're looking for. Oh yeah, everything helps, boss. Everything helps. In this day and age, whatever you can do to get your loan or your line of credit, that's what you have to do. Okay. And, going back to what I said about business plan, a business plan is really important. Make sure that you have, okay, when we talk about a business plan, you don't have to write a business plan yourself. See, so don't be scared. I know I'm not trying to scare the hell out of you, trying to like razzle dazzle you. No, no, no. Some people are strong when it comes to business plans. Some people are not. I'm not trying to judge anybody here. No, but see, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you have no idea what executive summary means in relationship to a business plan, what description of your business means, what market analysis means, what SWOT analysis means, what financial projections means. Well, if you have no idea of all those things means, it's just about it's about time rather that you actually reach out to someone who does know what those things mean, boss. Right? That's what it is. And also, you might want to consider alternative lenders, because Capital One is fantastic. We love this bank, but they're not the only one. You have a lot of players out there. You have some online lenders. You have Blue Vine, for example, that also gives you a pretty good business line of credit. The only problem is those online lenders such as Blue Vine or those alternative lenders such as SmartBase. They're not a regular bank, so they're not going to give you as much as Capital One. Remember, Capital One is giving you from $10,000 to $5 million. Blue Vine is giving you from $5,000 to $250,000. So that's really what the delta is at. And one thing I also want you to think about when we talk about the types of business lines of credit for bad credit, you have lines of credit that you have term loans can be turned into lines of credit. You have also, going back to what I said about having alternative sources of funding, you have to think about other types of funding for your business, right? Term loans, merchant cash advances, invoice financing and factoring, business loans, like you have things like business loan alternatives for bad credit, business grants, and crowdfunding. So here we're talking about exiting the Capital One, exiting the Capital One business line of credit ecosystem and looking elsewhere, because Capital One does not provide merchant cash advances in the traditional way. They might structure a deal to sort of please a specific client, but a merchant cash advance is not something that Capital One does specifically. They might change in the future, who knows? They might change also depending on your geography, who knows? Okay, because Capital One is changing their business model all the time. So, but Capital One does not provide also invoice financing and factoring. So if your goal is to get a Capital One business line of credit because you want to have access to some cash to take care of business in the future, well, maybe you might want to consider other alternative sources of funding, right? So, and one thing I also want to say here is that the bottom line is you want to start by building a relationship with Capital One. If there's anything I want you to take away from this show, I want you to remember that you need to actually build a relationship way before applying for a Capital One business line of credit with EIN optional. Okay, so it's really, and when we talk about having that relationship, I want you to do two things. I want you to open a business checking account at Capital One, and I want you to talk to a Capital One branch ambassador. Okay, and you want this person to you want to be on a first name basis with that person. You want them to know you personally, and not personally like in trying to know about your private business, but at least you want to talk to them several times so they know they were speaking to a live person. They know who you are, not just the name on an account, not just like you want to remove the anonymity. the anonymous part of things here. Okay, so this is really important. And one thing I also want to say here is that I want you to be in a situation where you can actually constantly change the dynamics of that relationship. What I'm trying to say is open maybe a Capital One business savings account. Why just stop at a checking account? Okay, the world is yours. Go grab it. Thank you so much for your attention. In today's conversation, I was just talking to you about Capital One business lines of credit with EIN optional. So I gave you an overview. I explained to you the steps, the eligibility, the pro tips, and the approach you need to follow to get there. Thank you. God bless you. I will see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.